The next section we're going to look at is the 5 functions of listening. So the 5 functions that we're going to look at are comprehending, discerning, analyzing, appreciating, supporting, and then how you might adapt your listening style depending on the circumstances. I think we look at this as, the um, as emotional intelligence, as communication intelligence. So how good are you at figuring out what is going to be the best way to listen based on the circumstances and what is needed based on who you're speaking with and the environment that you're speaking within. As a first step of comprehending, we're looking more at information that's being presented. So think about, hopefully, you're trying to comprehend based on in your college courses, right? So you're trying to gather information. I think the other place where this becomes really valuable is, if you're in a working environment and your boss tells you to do something, you kind of want to make sure that you understand what the boss is looking for so that you're able to accommodate and understand what it is that they want you to do. So we want to make sure you're accurately interpreting information and storing it so that you're able to follow through with it the next day based on needs. And then if you're doing a good job of listening for comprehension, you're going to be able to recall the information later and be able to use it in a beneficial way. Next piece we're going to look at is listening to discern, so maybe distinguishing sounds. If you're listening to someone that you care about, or maybe communication's important in a specific context, maybe we're going to listen for mood or if the person is stressed. There's times when I've been around specific people when you kind of didn't know who you're going to interact with because they had really big changes in their moods. So really paying attention to who they were going to be when they came. I had a boss years ago, and I honestly, when they came downstairs, I didn't know who I was going to be interacting with until they spoke. Sometimes I could tell by the way they were walking down the stairs. I was like, oh, I can't wait to find out who this person's going to be, because they were just so different depending on what was going on with them at that moment. So yeah, so sometimes we're discerning sounds. Sometimes maybe we're listening to music and we're trying to distinguish different pieces in that. But the idea is that we're trying to maybe distinguish tonality or sound or the way that the information is coming across to our ear. Our next step is to analyze the information. So carefully evaluate based on the information you're going to receive, and then you want to judge the message. How is this information coming across to me? When I am listening to speeches in speech class, that I'm trying to analyze the information I'm getting. So not necessarily, if I'm listening to a story, I'm not necessarily just listening to the story, I'm listening to the way that the information is coming across. I'm evaluating the information, excuse me. I'm evaluating the information, I'm categorizing it and figuring out the best way to give feedback on it. So I think that one I'm specifically focusing on analyzing. Our next part would be to appreciate. So maybe I'm just listening for enjoyment purposes. So if I'm listening to music, I might be just enjoying music. If I'm listening to someone tell me a story, I'm just appreciating the story. I'm not trying to garner anything out of it. I'm just enjoying the experience of them telling the story. The last one would be to support. So how are we going to support this person? If I'm doing coaching or hypnotherapy and I'm working with clients, a lot of times I'm basically listening for support. I'm not really judging what they're saying. I'm listening to what they have to say for content in a big way, because it's part of my job to do that. But it's not my job to judge what the person's saying outside of understanding it. I'm not really evaluating outside of what process I need to do for the person. And then I might express empathy for that person just based on the circumstances or any kind of challenges they might be experiencing at that moment. Now, the idea is that we're going to be able to adapt. So figure out how we're going to process or listen based on the circumstances you've been given. And that could change throughout the conversation. So maybe the person's calling you and initially you're going to be supportive, and then maybe the topic shifts to something else and you might be appreciating a story, and maybe they're asking you for some feedback. So then you might need to analyze their information. So you need to be able to purposely adjust what you're doing as you're listening to the information based on what's happening in the conversation at that given moment. So the pieces that we talked about were comprehension, being able to discern, to analyze, to appreciate, and to support in listening.